Hey guys, what is up? RedPandaMining here. How you guys all doing? Hope you're all doing really well and have a really good day. In this video, I just want to explain a couple different things which I don't do anymore, and it's just experience for me that I've garnered over the past couple years in GPU mining, and so I just want to go through a few things with you all. And so I hope this will help some people that maybe gotten into mining this year and maybe never thought of or maybe never experienced these types of scenarios before. Okay, so the first big one that I want to go through is power bars, and mainly mining on 110 volt or 120 volt circuits like this. Okay, typical North American plug, that's 15 amps, and so mainly these kind of circuits, if you do the math, 120 times 15 amps, that's going to give you about 1800 watts. And of course, you want to make sure you go up to the 80% rule of that, so around 1500 watts on a circuit like this. But a whole living room or maybe a bedroom is going to most likely share the same breaker. Okay, so you're most likely going to have multiple of these in the same room, and that's going to be wired on the same circuit, if that makes sense. All right, the same circuit which goes to the breaker in the electrical panel. So you can only go up to 1500 watts. Now, talking about power bars, I have seen many horror stories and pictures on r/GPU mining on Reddit. And there's been a few cases where people have burned down their houses or garage as the culprit was a cheap surge protector or cheap power bar that was running on 110 like this. And they had probably a mining rig that was going more than the capacity of a 15 amp circuit. And so depending on the cable gauge, the quality of the power bar, that is definitely going to be a cause for concern. And so you should always be mindful of how much power you're using. Get like a watt meter, see how much amperage, how much wattage your mining rig is going to be pulling. And also maybe you want to check out the wiring in your house, wherever you live. Let's say you might live in an old house that's before 1975 or 1980s, and the wiring in your house is aluminum. And so that will not be up to code, and that will most likely definitely cause some issue, maybe a fire, as aluminum wiring is not as good as copper wiring, which is up to code now, I guess, up to spec. So to each of their own. I've seen many different things out there of people utilizing power bars, and it's just not good. I've used cheap like Amazon basic power bars, and I know for a fact even like handling like 1000 watts concurrently like 24/7 on a cheap power bar is a bad idea. Definitely a bad idea. And so what happened to me in my experience, the power bar it stopped working. Like the switch like this, it just wouldn't work anymore as I plugged it into the wall. And so I guess the wiring in the power bar itself was just crappy, and it couldn't handle like at least 1000 watts. Definitely check the specs of the power bars, as I know like on Amazon they'll say like how many joules or even how many watts is capable, all right, on that power bar. So just be mindful of that, guys. Go check your power bars or surge protectors, whatever, anything like that right now, because that is something I think everyone should be mindful of. So now you guys are wondering, Red Panda, what is the solution then? Well, the solution is to upgrade, the solution that I did was to upgrade to 240 volt, 30 amp, and I'm using industrial enterprise grade power distribution units, okay, PDUs. I'm using industrial sized 14 AWG 15 amp 240 volt capable. All right, so you do the math there. The capacity for each of these cables can go up to about 3000 watts, right? But gotta be mindful the 80% rule of that. And so yeah, I have a video talking about how do I power my mining rigs. I'll have that link down below. I talk about the circuit panel, the 30 amp 240 volt breakers, going into the 30R receptacles, and then I have all of my PDUs plugging into those receptacles. I have 3 PDUs right now, okay, so they look like this, and a lot of my PDUs have volt amp meters that I can make sure that I'm not going to go past 24 amps, which is the 80% rule on 30 amps, okay? So this is one of the big things for me, the reason why I went this route, because 1, I can have more capacity. That's actually the biggest reason. 2, I'm more safer on these types of industrial enterprise grade power distribution units that are meant to run 24/7. And so yeah, I just don't think power bars like these are meant to be run 24/7, especially high wattage mining rigs going through these and going through 110 volt. It's just not safe in my opinion. All right, so guys, that's the first thing that I want to talk to you all regarding my experience of just power bars and just being mindful and being safe about that. Okay, the next thing I want to talk to you all regarding powering mining rigs is gonna be splitters. Now, there are a lot of different PCIe splitters out there, and I have experienced, I think, all of them. And there are a few that have burned on me, especially the ones that are from Alibaba. I got one right here. As you can see, there's some brownage burn here. And you guys may have saw my videos, I would say a year and a half ago, where I had an EVGA P104 rig that was using this splitter right here. This is an Alibaba one. That this gauge right here, they claim it was 18, but I'm pretty sure this is like 20 gauge. All right, so that is why the cable burnt. I had a lot of these that burnt. And so this is an 8-pin to dual 8-pin from Alibaba. No, sorry, this is from AliExpress. I bought these about 2 years ago. And then I got a few more splitters here, which this one from Amazon, I got this one from Amazon. This is a 6-pin to dual 8-pin. And honestly, this one's been okay. I haven't had any burnage incidents with this, but I do not utilize any more 6 to dual 8-pin PCIe splitters anymore, and I believe you guys shouldn't as well, as there's gonna be a lot better PCIe splitters now on the market, and they're gonna be a lot thicker as well. So what I mean by that, I'll show you guys. I don't know if you can notice this on the video, but from the AliExpress one to the GPUrisers.com or GPUrisers.uk splitters, you can see the gauge difference, okay? These are much thicker than this one here. And so I've had over 200, 300 of these splitters now on a lot of my mining rigs over the past year, 2 years now, and they've been totally great. They've been awesome. I've had no issues with splitting any of my mining rigs with these splitters. You just have to be mindful of the power capacity of the GPUs, and as long as you are using enough PCIe strands coming from the power supply, that should give you the capacity. Each PCIe strand should give you theoretically 150 to 255 watts depending on the gauge of the wiring coming out of the power supply. Okay, so actually that's a good segue into this cable right here. This is not a splitter, but this is a parallel miner, 6-pin to 8-pin. And the gauge on this, they say on parallel miner, is 16 gauge. And so this is capable of going up to 400 watts, which I think is a bit far-fetched. I don't think I've seen tests of that, but just being mindful, guys. But when it comes to, you know, splitters or extenders or anything like that, guys, what I just wanted to boil it down to is the gauge of the cabling. So these 3 splitters right here that I've gotten recently from Nerd Gears, the white ones from GPUrisers.com, the thickness of these, they claim it's 18 AWG, and I'm gonna say that's definitely what it is, because if you look at the parallel miner one to the GPU Risers one, the parallel miner one is a little bit thicker, as they said this is 16 gauge, and then this is 18 gauge. And so I showed you guys my burnt one here from my P104s, that this is definitely a lot less thicker than the 18 gauge. They claim that this was 18 gauge. No, this is definitely like 20, maybe 22 gauge. And stay tuned, I am gonna have a video of cutting up all of these splitters because I wanna see the thickness of the wire, the copper inside of these cables, okay? That's a video I've been wanting to do, but I'm waiting to get some tools so that I can measure the thickness of the wiring, okay? So stay tuned for that. Okay, so hopefully you guys understand what I'm talking about regarding splitters. You just gotta be mindful of the gauge and your capacity and the strands you're using for your mining rigs, just understanding the TDP of the GPUs and your capacity, power capacity of the power supply that you're gonna utilize on your mining rig. You may need more power supplies depending on what GPUs you're using, okay? Next thing I wanna talk to you all about is risers. Okay, so I've had a lot of experience with risers now, a lot of different versions of risers, but mainly what I wanted to talk about is powering the risers, okay? So there's been times where I've used SATA before, SATA to PCIe, on some of my mining rigs back in the day. Okay, not now. All of my mining rigs currently are using PCIe. Okay, PCIe is definitely the number one thing that a lot of people recommend, including myself. But when it comes to this SATA to PCIe adapter, which, you know, some risers do come with it, but GPU risers, they actually don't put that cable in it anymore. Some people may argue that SATA to PCIe is fine, but it's really going to depend on the GPUs that you're going to be utilizing. And so this will be fine on, you know, in my experience, on 1060s and, you know, just smaller GPUs that have smaller power capacity, TDP, especially if you're going to run them at full bore. And so for GPUs like 3090s, 3080s, I just don't recommend SATA for powering the risers for those GPUs, because you just don't know if these are going to be handling more than, I think these are rated for 54 watts or something like that. PCIe is rated for 75. So you want to make sure you have that capacity for bigger GPUs, all right? That's just what I've learned over the past years. And I've seen instances where a lot of people burn these up because one, they just didn't know, or two, maybe they just didn't have the means to plug in the PCIe, right? So then that's when you're going to have to invest in the nicer and thicker 8-pin to dual 8-pin splitters for PCIe. Okay, so that you can see here, I'm splitting off from P104 to a riser, and it's going into a parallel miner, 16 gauge, into the breakout board there. Apparently they said this can handle up to 400 watts, right? And so when I'm mining on the P104 with the riser, both combined should only draw between, I think, 150 watts or less if I was mining Ethereum on this P104. So theoretically, this has enough capacity going to the breakout board, with the splitter, okay? Anyways, I generally don't recommend SATA unless you know what you're doing and you know what types of GPUs won't require that much wattage coming out of the riser, okay? So just be mindful of that. So yeah, for me personally, I do not use SATA to PCIe anymore. All of my mining rigs are on PCIe for the SATA power on all of my rigs, and has been ever since this whole, I would say, the past year and a half. Yeah, 2 years actually. I haven't used SATA for powering my risers anymore. Okay, one thing I wanted to end off in, guys, what I don't do anymore for my mining rigs, as a general rule of thumb of when I build mining rigs, is I do not do like 8 GPU or 12 GPU mining rigs. Now, I know you're looking at this and laughing. Red Panda, you're lying, because, well, I'm doing this for content and I'm doing this for fun, okay, guys? And stay tuned. I have ordered a bunch of these, like, bifurcation cards here. PCIe bifurcation, X4, 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 3 slot distance. Oh, yeah, that's just the space between the PCIe. But you can see this PCIe slot here is ribbed, and there's like X4 going to each of these X16 slots. So stay tuned. I'm going to be plugging these 3 cards into the Threadripper motherboard on the X16, because you guys know that BIOS mode on these slots, I can do X4, X4, X4 mode. And so I'm going to try these 1 to 4 adapters on these PCIe ports right here. Okay, so that's going to be fun. Stay tuned for that video. But yeah, just explaining the mining rigs that I don't build, you know, 12 GPU mining rigs in open air rigs like this, okay? So I have like the typical AAA Wave 12 GPU mining frame, but I only utilize these as 6 GPU mining rigs, okay? And I do have one here as a AAA Wave 6 GPU frame, but I want to upgrade this to one of these in the future. But the rest of my GPU mining rigs here, as you guys can see, are all 6, 6, 6. And why I do 6 is because it's just, for me, easier to manage and easier to cool as well. As there's a lot of spacing between the GPUs, and so cooling the GPUs is going to be a lot easier in that aspect, and helps the GPU to breathe, all that kind of stuff. And so yeah, that's why I don't build, like, you know, bigger GPU rigs anymore, even though I'd like to. It looks cool, you know, having like 12 graphics cards on one of these AAA Wave frames, but you're just gonna run into issues of heat, and depending on which GPUs, the memory temperatures could go high, and you're just gonna have cables everywhere. And if a rig goes down or something, then you're gonna have to troubleshoot if it's a broken riser or a GPU or something on the motherboard. It's just going to be such a hassle to troubleshoot. So that is why I've kept my rigs like this. And honestly, I haven't had to troubleshoot these at all this year. They've just been running just flawlessly and just super easy. Alright guys, I think that's it for this video. That is just a few things, I guess some big things that I've learned in powering my mining rigs over the years, and also just a few troubleshooting things regarding building bigger mining rigs or smaller mining rigs, and talking about power for SATA, and talking about powering all my mining rigs with 240 volt 30 amp. That has definitely been a game changer, and in my opinion that is something I think everyone should do, as like I said before, you're going to be utilizing enterprise grade PDUs, the C13, the C14 power cables, which a lot of them use for servers which run 24/7. Okay, so things like that, it's just going to be a lot better and safer in that aspect. Okay my friends, there was definitely a lot more stuff, but I think I'm going to leave it there. This video is long enough. Let me know your thoughts, and I appreciate you all. I'll see you all in the next video. Have a good one, and peace out.